Welcome back, dear friends and story lovers. Tonight we bring you a tale where love is tested, secrets come to light, and fate takes an unexpected turn. Every moment will pull you in deeper, and every choice could change everything. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments, and if this story touches your heart, like, subscribe, share it with someone who believes in true love, and hit the bell so you never miss the next chapter. Asterisk the rain hammered against the windows of the Blackstone Gallery, like bullets against glass, each drop exploding into 1,000 fragments before sliding down into the darkness below. Inside, the charity auction hummed with the quiet desperation of New York's elite trying to buy their way into heaven with tax-deductible donations. Sophia Chen adjusted the diamond bracelet on her wrist, the weight of it familiar yet suffocating. At 28, she had perfected the art of looking like she belonged in rooms like this, even though every cell in her body screamed that she was an imposter. The stolen Monet on her apartment wall would have paid for half the items being auctioned tonight, but nobody here knew that. Nobody knew that the elegant woman in the midnight blue Valentino dress had fingers that could crack a safe in under 3 minutes. Lot 47, a rare first edition of The Great Gatsby, signed by F. Scott Fitzgerald himself. The auctioneer's voice cut through her thoughts as she scanned the crowd from her position near the bar. She wasn't here for charity. She was here for Marcus Valdez, the arms dealer who laundered money through art purchases. Tonight he would bid on something expensive, and she would follow the money trail back to his accounts. Simple, clean, legal, for once. A man stumbled into her, his shoulder hitting hers hard enough to send her champagne glass tumbling. The crystals shattered against the marble floor, drawing stares from nearby guests. "Christ, I'm sorry." The voice was rough, strained. "See you there." Sophia looked up into the darkest brown eyes she had ever seen. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of face that had seen too much and survived anyway. A thin scar ran from his left temple to his jawline, and his black tuxedo looked expensive but sat on him like armor he wasn't comfortable wearing. "It's fine," she said automatically, but something in his expression made her pause. He was looking at her like he recognized her, which was impossible. She had made sure of that years ago. "No, it's not fine." We reached into his jacket and, for a split second, Sophia's hand moved toward the small knife strapped to her thigh beneath her dress. Old habits. But he only pulled out a handkerchief, kneeling to help clean up the glass. "I'm having a hell of a night, aren't we all?" The words slipped out before she could stop them, more honest than she intended. He looked up at her from where he crouched, and something shifted in the air between them. Recognition, not of faces, but of something deeper. The kind of damage that left invisible scars. "Daniel Reeves," he said, standing and extending his hand. "Emma Rodriguez." The lie came easily, the identity she had crafted for tonight's mission. But when their hands touched, something electric shot up her arm, and for a moment, she forgot why she was there at all. "Can I buy you another drink, Emma?" "Seems like the least I can do." She should have said no. Should have walked away and focused on Valdez, who was now bidding on a sculpture near the front of the room. But Daniel's eyes held a kind of desperation that matched her own, and before she could think better of it, she nodded. They moved to a quieter corner of the gallery, away from the auction. The lighting here was softer, casting shadows that made conversation feel more intimate than it should have. "So what brings you to a charity auction on a night like this?" Daniel asked, accepting 2 glasses of champagne from a passing waiter. "Same thing as everyone else, I suppose. Trying to do good in the world." Another lie, but smoother this time. Daniel laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Right, good in the world." He took a long drink. "What if I told you I was here to kill someone?" Sophia's blood went cold, but she kept her expression neutral. "I'd say you have interesting conversation starters. What if I told you I was here to rob someone?" she found herself saying, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. They stared at each other in the dim lighting, the weight of their confessions hanging between them like a loaded gun. Daniel set down his glass. "Are you serious? Are you?" For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Daniel's mouth curved into something that might have been a smile if it hadn't been so sharp. "Marcus Valdez," he said quietly. "That's who you're after, isn't it?" Sophia's hand moved instinctively toward her weapon again. How do you know that? 'Cause Daniel, said his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. He's the one I'm here to kill. The silence stretched between them like a razor wire, each second sharpening the danger in the air. Around them, the auction continued its elegant dance of greed and pretense. But Sophia could only hear the thundering of her own heartbeat. We should walk away from each other right now, she whispered, her voice steady, despite the chaos in her chest. Yes, Daniel agreed, but neither of them moved. Marcus Valdez's laughter carried across the gallery as he shook hands with another. Bitter. The sound made Daniel's jaw clench, the scar along his face whitening with tension. He sold weapons to the cartel that killed my sister, Daniel said, his words so quiet they were almost lost in the ambient noise. 18 months ago, she was a journalist investigating arms trafficking. He tortured her for 3 days before they put a bullet in her head. Sophia felt something twist in her stomach. She had expected a professional hit, maybe rival gangs, or a business deal gone wrong. She hadn't expected grief this raw, this personal. And you? Daniel asked. What did he take from you? Sophia looked down at her hands, at the manicured nails that hid years of violence underneath. My brother. 5 years ago, Valdez laundered money for the people who ordered the hit. She met his eyes. I've been tracking his financial network, ever since trying to find enough evidence to destroy him legally. Legally. Daniel's laugh was bitter. How's that working out for you? Slower than I'd like. I can be faster. The offer hung between them, dangerous and tempting. Sophia had spent 5 years building cases, gathering evidence, working within a system that moved like molasses, while people like Valdez continued to profit from death. But murder? That would make her just like them. I can't be part of that, she said finally. Then don't be. Daniel straightened his tie, the gesture somehow making him look more lethal rather than more civilized. Just tell me where he'll be alone tonight. You don't understand. I need him alive. If he dies, all the evidence I've gathered, all the connections I've mapped, it could disappear. His organization will scatter, and I'll lose my chance to bring down the whole network. Daniel studied her face in the dim lighting. You need what? To get your evidence? How long? Sophia felt her pulse quicken. Why? Because maybe we can help each other. You get what you need to destroy his network. Then I get what I need. It was insane. Partnering with a man she had known for 10 minutes, a man who had just confessed to planning murder. But as she watched Valdez across the room, saw him charm another wealthy patron while blood money flowed through his accounts. Sanity felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. 3 days, she said. I need 3 days to access his private files. There's a gala at his estate this weekend. I've been planning to break in during the party, and you'll need a way in. I have an invitation. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Of course you do. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just that you're full of surprises, Emma Rodriguez. The way he said her false name made her skin prickle. Or should I call you Sophia Chen? Her hand was on her knife before she realized she had moved, the blade pressed against his ribs beneath his jacket. They were standing close enough that anyone watching would think they were having an intimate conversation. How do you know that? Name? She whispered. Daniel didn't even flinch. Because I've been tracking Valdez longer than you have. And because 5 years ago, Sophia Chen disappeared from MIT 3 weeks after her brother's murder. Brilliant computer science student turned invisible overnight? I assumed you were dead. Maybe I am. No, dead people don't fight this hard for justice. Sophia pressed the knife a little deeper, feeling the expensive fabric of his shirt part. Under the blade, are you working for him? If I were working for Valdez, you'd already be dead. The simple honesty in his voice made her believe him, which terrified her more than any threat could have. She withdrew the knife slowly, sliding it back into its sheath. Who are you really? Someone who lost everything to the same. Monster, you're hunting. Daniel adjusted his jacket where she had cut it. Someone who knows that 3 days from now, Marcus Valdez is going to get everything he deserves. Across the gallery, Valdez was moving toward the exit, flanked by 2 bodyguards. The auction was winding down, and Sophia's window of opportunity was closing. I have to go, she said. I need to follow him. Daniel caught her arm as she started to move away. His grip was gentle but firm, and the warmth of his hand sent an unexpected jolt through her. Sophia, when this is over, when Valdez is dead and his network is destroyed, what then? She looked into his dark eyes and saw the same question she had been avoiding for 5 years. What happened to people like them when the war was over? Where did broken soldiers go when there were no more battles to fight? I don't know, she admitted. His thumb brushed across her wrist, over the pulse point where her heartbeat hammered against her skin. But maybe we can figure it out together. Before she could respond, before she could think about what that might mean, Valdez disappeared. Through the gallery's main entrance, Sophia pulled free from Daniel's grip and moved to follow, but his voice stopped her one more time. The Meridian Cafe on 42nd Street, tomorrow at 2. If you want to do this together? She didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge that she had heard him. But as she stepped into the rain-soaked night to follow her brother's killer, she found herself already counting the hours until tomorrow afternoon. The Meridian Cafe smelled like burnt coffee and broken dreams, a far cry from the polished elegance of the night before. Sophia arrived 15 minutes early, choosing a corner booth with clear sight lines to both exits. Old habits. In exactly at 2 o'clock, and she noticed he did the same sweep of the room that she had done. Whatever his story, he had been trained by someone who knew what they were doing. You came, he said, sliding into the booth across from her. I said I would. People say a lot of things. He ordered black coffee from the waitress. No sugar, no cream. Everything about him was stripped down to the essentials. Doesn't mean they mean it. Sophia studied his face in the harsh fluorescent lighting. The scar looked worse here, more violent. Is Daniel Reeves even your real name? Does it matter? Everything matters? He smiled at that, the first genuine expression she had seen from him. David Morales, former Army Ranger, former D agent, former a lot of things. Former. Hard to keep a government job when you're planning to commit murder. The waitress brought his coffee, and they sat in silence until she was out of earshot again. The lunch crowd was thin, mostly office workers, grabbing quick meals between meetings. Normal people living normal lives. I looked you up, Sophia said finally. David Morales, decorated veteran, sister killed in Juarez while investigating arms trafficking. Officially resigned from the D 6 months after her death. Unofficially. Unofficially, you went off the grid. No credit card usage, no cell phone records, no digital footprint at all. Like you've disappeared. David took a sip of his coffee, grimaced at the taste. I got good at hiding. So did I. Sophia leaned forward, lowering her voice.
I've been
thinking about your proposal? 3 days to get the evidence I need, then you do what you came to do. And I think it's insane. But insane might be the only thing that works. She pulled a tablet from her purse, angled it so only he could see the screen. This is Valdez's estate. 47 rooms, private security, electronic surveillance. On every entrance, David studied the building schematics. When's the party? Tomorrow night. Annual fundraiser for some fake charity he runs. 200 guests, caterers, staff. Enough chaos to provide cover. What do you need from inside? His private office, 3rd floor, northeast corner. Keeps a safe behind a painting of his dead wife. Sophia traced the layout with her finger. Financial records, client lists, communication logs. Everything I need to map his entire network. How long? 2 hours minimum? Maybe 3 if the files are encrypted. David nodded slowly. I can give you that. How? By being exactly what he expects me to be? Something cold moved through Sophia's chest. Which is what? David reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope, slid it across the table. Inside was an invitation to Valdez's party, embossed on expensive paper. A potential client. David Morales, independent military contractor specializing in arms procurement for private security firms. Sophia stared at the invitation. You're going to pretend to want to buy weapons from him? I'm going to pretend to want to sell weapons to him. Big difference. Jesus Christ. She pushed the invitation back across the table. You've been planning this for months, haven't you? This whole thing, meeting me, offering to help me, all part of some elaborate setup. No. David's voice was sharp, urgent. Meeting you was an accident. Good accident, but an accident. I don't believe you. Then don't. He stood up, threw a $10 bill on the table. Do this alone. Break into his house, crack his safe, steal his files. I hope his security doesn't catch you. Hope you don't end up like your brother. The words hit her like a physical blow. Sophia felt her hands clench into fists, felt the familiar rage building in her chest. Don't you dare use my brother against me. I'm not using him against you. I'm trying to keep you alive. David sat back down, leaned across the table. You want the truth? Here's the truth. Valdez has killed 17 people in the last 5 years. Journalists, investigators, federal agents. Anyone who gets too close to his operation disappears. You think you're the first person to try to bring him down legally? I'm different. Why? Because you're smarter. Because you're more careful. Because you've spent 5 years planning the perfect revenge. David's eyes were hard now, unforgiving. Your brother probably thought the same thing. Sophia stood up. So fast, her chair scraped against the floor. Several patrons looked over, and she forced herself to sit back down, to lower her voice. You don't know anything about my brother. I know he was 24 years old. I know he was investigating money laundering operations for the FBI. I know he got too close to Valdez's network. And I know they found his body in the East River with 3 bullets in his chest. Each word was like a knife twist. Sophia felt tears threatening, felt the careful control she had built over 5 years starting to crack. Stop. I know you identified the body. I know you were the only family he had left. I know you've been living for nothing but revenge ever since. Stop. David reached across the table, covered her hands with his. His touch was warm, steady, and completely unexpected. I know, because I've been there, been exactly where you are right now. And I know that if you go into that house alone tomorrow night, I'll be reading about your death in the morning paper. Sophia looked down at their joined hands. Were scarred, calloused from years of violence. Hers were smooth, manicured, deceptive. But underneath, they were the same. Weapons shaped by loss. Why do you care? She whispered. Because yesterday, I was ready to die as long as I took Valdez with me. Today I have a reason to want to live through it. She looked up into his eyes and saw something that terrified her more than any physical threat. She saw hope. Insane, she said again. Yes. If we do this together, if something goes wrong, we both die. Yes. And you're okay with that? David squeezed her hands gently. I've been dead for 18 months, Sophia. Yesterday was the first time I felt alive. The cafe buzzed with ordinary conversation around them, people discussing work and weather and weekend plans. Normal life continuing while they planned something that could destroy them both. Okay, she said finally. Partners. But even as they shook hands, even as they began planning the details of tomorrow night, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that David was still hiding something. Something important. Something that might get them both killed. The Valdez estate rose from the Long Island coastline, like a monument to blood money, all glass and steel and sharp edges that caught the moonlight. Sophia sat in the passenger seat of David's rental car, watching security guards patrol the perimeter with German shepherds and assault rifles. 2 guards at the main gate, 4 more at the rear entrance. She murmured into her earpiece. Motion sensors on the east wall, but there's a blind spot near the service entrance. David's voice crackled back through the tiny speaker. Copy. That. I'm approaching the front door now. Me 20 minutes to get Valdez distracted, then move. Through her binoculars, Sophia watched David stride up the main walkway in his perfectly tailored tuxedo. Briefcase in hand, every inch the successful arms dealer he was pretending to be. She had watched him transform over the last 24 hours, seen him shed every trace of the grieving brother, and become someone harder, colder, more dangerous. It should have reassured her. Instead, it made her stomach twist with unease. Target acquired. David's voice came through the earpiece. Valdez is very interested in what I have to offer. Sophia slipped out of the car, keeping to the shadows as she made her way around the perimeter. Her black bodysuit was designed for exactly this kind of work, flexible enough for climbing, equipped with pockets for her tools. The knife strapped to her thigh felt heavier tonight, like a promise she might have to keep. She reached the blind spot in the motion sensors and began scaling the estate's wall. Years of training had made her movements fluid, nearly silent. Within minutes, she was dropping into the manicured gardens on the other side. The party was in full swing on the main floor. Through the windows, she could see elegant figures moving through brightly lit rooms, champagne glasses catching the light. Somewhere in that crowd, David was playing his role, keeping Valdez busy while she worked. She made her way to the service entrance, where a catering truck was unloading supplies. In the chaos, it was easy to slip inside unnoticed. The kitchen staff was too busy to pay attention to one more person in black moving through the corridors. "I'm inside," she whispered into her mic. "Moving to the 3rd floor." "Good. Valdez is giving me a tour of his wine collection. Very proud of his 82 Bordeaux. We'll be busy for at least an hour." The service elevator carried her up in silence. The 3rd floor was deserted, all the action concentrated on the ground level. Sophia found Valdez's office exactly where the blueprints had indicated, behind heavy oak doors that looked like they belonged in a museum. The lock took her 43 seconds to pick. Inside, the office was a study in masculine power. Wood, leather furniture, and walls lined with photographs of Valdez shaking hands with politicians, generals, and other men who dealt in death for profit. Behind the massive desk, a portrait of a beautiful woman with sad eyes dominated the wall. Sophia moved to the painting and found the hidden safe behind it, just as her intelligence had indicated. This lock was more sophisticated, electronic, rather than mechanical, but she had come prepared. She attached a small device to the keypad and waited as it cycled through possible combinations. "How's it going up there?" David's voice in her ear. 5 more minutes on the safe? Maybe less." "Good. Because Valdez is very eager to see my merchandise. He's talking about placing a substantial order." Something in David's tone made Sophia pause. There was an edge there, a satisfaction that seemed wrong for someone playing a role. The safe clicked open. Inside were exactly the files she had been looking for. Financial records, shipping manifests, client lists, communication logs. 5 years of evidence that would destroy Valdez's network and bring justice for her brother. She began photographing everything with a high-resolution camera, working quickly but methodically. Each document was another piece of the puzzle, another step toward the revenge she had been planning for so long. "Sophia." David's voice again, but different now. Strained. "We have a problem." She froze, camera halfway to another document. "What kind of problem?" "The kind where Valdez knows exactly who you are and why you're here." Ice flooded her veins. "That's impossible. My cover identity is perfect. Your cover identity is perfect." But Marcus Valdez has been expecting Sophia Chen to show up at his house for the last 6 months. "David, what are you saying?" A long pause. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm saying you need to run. Right now." The office door slammed open behind her. Sophia spun around to find 3 armed men in the doorway, weapons trained on her chest. Behind them stood Marcus Valdez himself, a thin smile playing across his lips. "Miss Chen," he said in accented English. "Such a pleasure to finally meet you face to face." Sophia's hand moved toward her knife, but the gunmen were professionals. They had her covered from multiple angles, no chance for her to reach a weapon without being shot. "I was beginning to think you would never work up the wall." "Courage to visit my home," Valdez continued, stepping into the room. He was smaller than she had expected, almost grandfatherly, which somehow made him more terrifying. 5 years is a long time to hold a grudge. "Where's David?" she demanded. Valdez laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Oh, you mean Agent Morales? He's downstairs, enjoying the party." "Excellent wine selection, don't you think, Agent?" "David Morales D? Although I suppose you could call him former D, since he's been working for me for the last 8 months." The world tilted. Sideways. Sophia felt like she was falling even though she was standing perfectly still. That's impossible. Is it? A grieving brother, consumed by revenge, approaches me through intermediaries, offers to sell information about federal investigations in exchange for the chance to get close to me. Very touching story, really. Valdez picked up one of the photographs she had taken, examined it with mild interest. Of course, I knew from the beginning that he was planning to kill me. But David underestimated my reach, my resources. It's amazing what a man will do when you threaten. The right person? What are you talking about? His sister, Miss Chen, Maria Morales, such a lovely young woman. It would be a shame if something happened to her. Sophia's knees nearly gave out. She's alive. Very much so. Safe and sound, in a secure location, as long as her brother continues to be useful to me. Valdez set down the photograph. Which brings us to you. The famous Sophia Chen, brilliant hacker, devoted sister, seeker of justice. David has told me so much about you. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. David hadn't just lied to her. He had delivered her directly into the hands of her brother's killer. He set me up, she whispered. With great reluctance, I assure you. But when faced with the choice between your life and his sister's life, well, blood is thicker than water, don't you think? Valdez nodded to his men, and they moved forward. Sophia tensed, ready to fight even though she knew it was hopeless. Oh, don't look so dramatic, Valdez said. I'm not going to kill you, not yet. Anyway, you're far too valuable alive. What do you want? It's the same thing your brother wanted, Miss Chen. Justice, you see. There are several federal agents who have been making my life very difficult recently, and you're going to help me identify. Them go to hell, such spirit. I can see why David was so taken with you, Valdez smiled. But I think you'll change your mind when you see what I have planned for Agent Morales. After all, he did betray you. Doesn't that deserve some form of punishment? One of the gunmen pressed a syringe into her neck before she could react. The drug hit her system like a sledgehammer, and the room began to spin. As consciousness faded, the last thing Sophia heard was David's voice through her earpiece, desperate and broken. Sophia, I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I couldn't let her die. Then everything went black. Consciousness returned like a slowly rising tide, bringing with it the taste of copper and the smell of concrete. Sophia's head pounded as she forced her eyes open, taking in her surroundings through the haze of whatever drug Valdez had used. On her, she was in a basement, probably beneath the estate. Exposed pipes ran along the ceiling, and the walls were bare concrete blocks that had seen better decades. Industrial shelving lined one wall, stacked with wooden crates marked in Spanish. Her hands were zip-tied behind her back, secured to a metal chair that was bolted to the floor. Professional work. No chance of breaking free without tools, she didn't. Have you're awake. David's voice came from somewhere behind her, and she twisted in the chair to see him. He was secured the same way she was, blood trickling from a cut above his left eye. How do you feel? Like I want to kill you. Fair. Enough. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of his betrayal heavy between them. Above, Sophia could hear music and laughter from the party still going on. Normal people living normal lives while she and David waited to die in a basement. Is she really alive? Sophia asked finally. Your sister? Yes. How do you know? Because Valdez has been sending me photos, videos, proof of life every week for the last 8 months. David's voice was hollow, defeated. She's in a house somewhere in Mexico. Guarded, but unharmed as long as I do what he wants. And what he wanted was me. What he wanted was information about federal investigations into his network. I was supposed to get close to you, earn your trust, find out what evidence you had. Gathered, Sophia laughed bitterly. Mission accomplished. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I was going to feed you false information, make you think your case was stronger than it was, keep you safe while I figured out how to get Maria back. But I fell in love with you. The words hit her like a physical blow. Sophia felt something crack inside her chest, something she had spent 5 years keeping carefully protected. Don't. It's true.
Ow.
From the moment I saw you at that gallery, the moment you put a knife to my ribs and didn't even flinch when I called you by your real name, you were everything I had stopped believing existed in this world. Stop talking. Someone who still fought for justice instead of just revenge. Someone who still believed that things could be made right. You betrayed me. The words came out as a scream, echoing off the concrete walls. You handed me over to the man who killed my brother. I know, you destroyed everything I worked for, I know. I trusted you, David's voice was barely above a whisper. I know. Footsteps on the basement stairs interrupted them. Marcus Valdez appeared, flanked by the same 3 gunmen from before. He had changed out of his party clothes into a simple black suit, like he was dressed for a funeral. Such a touching reunion, he said, pulling up a 3rd chair. I do hope you've had time to catch up. What do you want, Valdez? Sophia demanded. What I've always wanted, Miss Chen. Complete information about every federal investigation into my operations. Agent Morales has been helpful, but his access was limited. You, on the other hand, have been building a comprehensive database for 5 years, and if I refuse, Valdez nodded to one of his men, who stepped forward and pressed a gun to David's temple. Then Agent Morales dies. Then his sister dies. Then you die, but only after you watch me torture them both. Sophia looked at David, saw the resignation in his eyes. He'd already made his peace with dying. But his sister was innocent, had never chosen this war. The files are encrypted, she said finally. Even if I give you access, you'll need the decryption keys, which you will provide, which I will provide in exchange for Maria Morales' life. And Agent Morales' life as well, I assume? Sophia met David's eyes across the basement, saw him shake his head almost imperceptibly, saw him mouth the word no. Just the girl, she said. David's face crumpled. Sophia, don't do this. It's already done. She turned back to Valdez. The files are stored on a secure server. I'll need a computer with internet access to retrieve them. Of course, Valdez smiled. But first, I think Agent Morales deserves to understand the full scope of his failure. He nodded to his men again. 2 of them grabbed David's chair and carried him closer until he and Sophia were sitting face to face. See, Agent Morales, Miss Chen has just agreed to give me everything I need to destroy the federal cases against me, in exchange for your sister's life. Not yours. Just hers. David was staring at Sophia like she had just driven a knife through his heart. Why? Because she's innocent. Because she didn't choose this. Sophia's voice was steady, clinical. Because someone in this room needs to survive, I can't let you do this. You don't have a choice. Valdez was watching their exchange with obvious pleasure. Such devotion. It's almost romantic. There's one more thing, Sophia said, still looking at David. The files are booby-trapped. If Valdez tries to access them without following the exact protocol I give him, they'll be destroyed, and copies automatically sent to every federal agency in the country. You're lying. Try me. Valdez studied her face for a long moment. Realize that after I have what I need, you'll both be dead. I realize that if you kill me before you have what you need, you'll never get it at all. A standoff. Sophia could see Valdez calculating odds, weighing risks. Finally, he nodded. Very well. Bring her a laptop. One of the gunmen left and returned minutes later with a military-grade laptop. They cut Sophia's restraints and positioned the computer on a small table in front of her. David watched every movement, his jaw clenched with helpless rage. Sophia's fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. She navigated through layers of encryption and security protocols, each keystroke bringing Valdez closer to destroying 5 years of her work. But hidden within the code, invisible to anyone watching over her shoulder, she embedded something else entirely. There, she said finally, turning the laptop toward Valdez. Everything you wanted. Financial records, federal case files, witness lists, evidence logs. Complete access to every investigation into your network. Valdez scrolled through the files, his smile widening with each page. Remarkable. You really were quite thorough, Miss Chen. I'm a thorough person, indeed. Now, as promised, proof that I am a man of my word. He pulled out his phone and played a video. On the small screen, a young woman with David's eyes sat in what looked like a hotel room. She was reading a newspaper dated that morning, proof that she was alive and unharmed. Maria will be released. Within the hour, Valdez said. She'll be driven to the American consulate in Tijuana and released unharmed. David sagged in his chair, relief and grief warring across his features. His sister would live. It was all that mattered to him now. And now, Valdez continued, putting away his phone, I'm afraid this is where our business relationship ends. He nodded to his men, who raised their weapons. Sophia closed her eyes and thought about her brother, about the justice she had spent. 5 years pursuing, at least Maria would survive. At least one innocent person would walk away from this nightmare. The gunshots were deafeningly loud in the enclosed space. But when Sophia opened her eyes, she was still alive. Valdez and his men were on the ground, blood spreading across the concrete floor. In the doorway stood Jackson Torres, the security coordinator from the hotel, flanked by a team of federal agents in tactical gear. Sophia Chen, you are under arrest, Jackson said, but his voice was gentle. You have the right to remain attorney. Jackson. Sophia stared at him in confusion. What are you doing here? Agent Jackson Torres, FBI. I've been running surveillance on you for the last 6 months, waiting for you to lead us to Valdez's operation. The world spun around her. Another betrayal, another lie, another person who had used her trust against her. The hotel, she said numbly. That night at the charity auction, you set it all up. We knew you were planning something. We knew you'd been tracking Valdez. Just didn't know when or how you'd make your move. So you've been watching me? Following me, waiting? Jackson knelt beside her chair, began cutting away her restraints. The files you just gave Valdez? We recorded everything. His confession, his threats, his admission to ordering your brother's murder. Combined with the evidence you've gathered over the last 5 years, we have enough to destroy his entire network. Sophia looked at the laptop, at the files she had. Just handed over to her brother's killer? Those files were real. I just gave him everything he needed to stay ahead of federal investigations. No, Sophia, you didn't. Jackson helped her to her feet. The files were real. But the little subroutine you embedded in the code is the one you thought we wouldn't notice? Didn't just give us access to Valdez's systems. It gave us access to everything. Bank accounts, communication networks, safe house locations. Entire word. Operation. David was staring at her with something like awe. You knew the FBI was watching. I suspected. Sophia's voice was hoarse from screaming. I've been paranoid for 5 years. You'll learn to spot surveillance after a while. So this whole thing, agreeing to help Valdez, sacrificing yourself, for my sister, was the only way to get him to confess while the FBI was recording. The only way to make sure he couldn't slip away on a technicality or disappear before a trial. Jackson was coordinating with his team, ensuring the scene was secure. Valdez had too many powerful friends, too many ways to make evidence disappear. We needed him on record, confessing to everything. And if your plan hadn't worked, David asked. If the FBI hadn't shown up in time. Sophia looked down at Valdez's body, at the man who had killed her brother and destroyed so many other lives. Then at least Maria would be safe. Sometimes that's enough. David reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. His fingers were warm against her cold skin, solid and real, in a world that had been built on lies. What happens now? He asked. Jackson overheard the question. Now you both go home. Valdez's network is finished. His associates will be rounded up within the week. The nightmare is over. But Sophia wasn't sure it would ever really be over. 5 years of planning revenge, 5 years of living for nothing but the hope of justice, and now it was done. Valdez was dead. His network destroyed. Her brother's killer finally punished. She should have felt satisfied, vindicated, free. Instead, she felt empty. Sophia, David said softly, about falling in love with you. No. And I meant it when I said I didn't know what happened to people like us when the war was over. I know that too. David squeezed her hand gently. Maybe we could figure it out together. Find out what comes after revenge. Sophia looked. at him, really looked at him, for the first time since that night at the gallery. Saw past the scars and the secrets to the man who had been willing to die to save his sister, had been used and betrayed just like she had, but who still chose hope over despair. Maybe, she said, as the FBI team led them up the basement stairs. And back into the world above, Sophia realized that for the first time in 5 years, she was thinking about tomorrow instead of yesterday, about healing instead of hurting, about living instead of just surviving. It wasn't the ending she had planned. It wasn't the clean, simple justice she had imagined, but it was enough behind them. Marcus Valdez lay dead on the concrete floor, his empire crumbling around him. Above them, the party continued, normal people living normal lives, unaware that the world had just become a little bit safer. And somewhere between the basement and the ground floor, Sophia Chen began to remember what it felt like to hope the end.